And welcome to another edition of Business in Motion, a program that focuses on business and entrepreneurship from an Afrocentric perspective, right here on WMEG Radio, Baltimore, Maryland, the number one station in the nation with the dissemination of valuable information with no hesitation or reservation, but an obligation and dedication to the elevation of your present situation. I'm your host, RGL Biz Coach, and I welcome you all to the program today. I'll let you know right now it's going to be an abbreviated version of Business in Motion, just simply because there's some things we've got to do a little bit later on. So it's abbreviated, but it's packed with so much information. This is very vital information for you, things that you need to know. And I'll tell you, whether or not you're just a person who wants a positive message, or if you are looking for ways to enhance your business and personal life strategies and concepts, or if you just want to listen to some good tunes and have a good time, you want to stick and stay with Business in Motion for the rest of this entire broadcast. So today, what is today all about? This is a very special day because we got the double. It's an 8-8. It happens to be August the 8th. It's a double 8. So there's some mini gates that open. All right? And things are changing in our world. Things are changing in the universe. And we're going to talk about that. And matter of fact, today, what we are focused on is the magic of stories. When I mean stories, I mean telling stories. And the power of perception. I mean, it's very, very important because so many things happen just based on what a person's belief is about a particular thing. And these things will affect you personally. It'll affect the decisions that you make in your personal life and business. It affects nations, leaders of nations, based on stories that they have told, stories that they have heard, and the power of the perception. So by the end of this show today, you're going to know how narratives impact your decision, then indirectly molds your business decisions, your personal decisions, and so many decisions that you have to make in your life. And that is locally and abroad. It is shaping those things that you do right here in the U.S. or it could be right in Baltimore if you're in Washington, D.C. or wherever you might be, locally again within your family, but also on a macro level. So we're talking about micro and macro decisions, all based on the magic of stories and the power of perception. And by the end of the show, you're going to also have a much better understanding of existing beliefs that have created tremendous wealth for some people on this earth, empires for others here on this earth, but that same belief has left others in a conundrum trying to figure out where they're going to get their next meal. That's how powerful this is, what I'm talking about. Again, the magic of stories and the power of perceptions. And you're going to feel a sense of freedom and power knowing that you have the capacity to play a vital role in reshaping your own reality and the world that you happen to live in today. That's what we're talking about. Now, again, today it is August the 8th. I feel so sad because summer is going by so quickly. It's like we're approaching we're approaching halfway point of the last month of celebrated summer. And boy, seems like I haven't gotten enough recreation. But no problem. I'll make up for it. This weekend I got some really good things going on down in North Carolina. I got to be down there and looking to have a good time while I'm away. The weather today is actually it's very good. It's not too hot. It's not too cool. It's in that low 80s, just perfect. And the humidity doesn't even feel that high. So maybe the prayers went out. I know at the beginning, like back in June, I was praying, like, how are we going to get some rain? Because I was experiencing a drought over in my neighborhood. It wouldn't rain. It had me watering the grass, getting up early in the morning and late in the evening, watering that grass. And so July came in and everything turned. So my prayer was answered. It was definitely answered. And I think it has rained at least 5 out of every 7 days since then. Since it started, we have experienced a whole lot of rain, which is good because now my yard is green. Everything is green and looking so vibrant. It looks so lively, just full of life. So that is a good thing. My prayer was answered. And if you don't remember, it was my main man, DJ Rock, told me in order to do a rain ritual, I had to wash my car. And that's what I did. And since I washed it, I'm telling you, it's rained at least 5 out of every 7 days. So that's all good. Let's go ahead and jump into things since today is going to be an abbreviated version of Business in Motion. And I'm a little bit appalled at the news that we get. I'm talking about all of them. I'm talking about from Fox to CNN, ABC, CBS, NBC, all of them, simply because they are failing to provide you with information that is going on all around the world today. And I'm telling you, there are major changes going on. Listen to me. Major changes going on in the world today. And I want to go back. I want to mention something that I was making you aware of a while back, and that was the way that the universe happens to be shifting and the new age that we're going into and the new energies that's coming into the planet and a way that those energies are having an impact on people. And if you are a certain people, they have an even more of an impact simply because of your makeup, your ability to be able to process this energy that's coming in and to be able to utilize it on different levels. And no, I'm telling you, these things are happening right now that is verifying everything that I stated. And what I stated wasn't so much coming from me. This was information I was provided with. These revelations I experienced way back in the early 80s from some very high, people who are very, very spiritual and, just gifted people, and they knew. And I was very fortunate to be able to get this. And so from time to time, I'll put it out there on Business in Motion and let people know. So what's happening right now in the world that the news is not telling you about? First of all, let me talk about France. And France is a nation in Europe. Everybody knows that. And a lot of people look up to France. When you're talking about going on vacations, whatever, they're talking about going to Gay Paris. Paris is supposed to be very nice. It's supposed to be one of the more liberal European nations. As a matter of fact, back in the day, many, many African Americans who were musicians, who were in the arts and entertainment, they relocated over to France because it seemed to be so much better than it was right here in the United States. Well, let me tell you this. France, as I have stated, and not just France, but many, many of the nations that people look up to because of their wealth and their riches came directly as a result of the exploitation of numerous people, many of them primarily, and with France in particular, mainly on the African continent. And those are the things that are changing. I'm telling you, one nation after another today, they are revolting the people, and they're having like revolutions that's going on. Just to give an idea of what I'm talking about, you have the country of Mali, you have the country of Burkina Faso, you've got Guinea, and now you have Niger. All of those is what they would refer to as Francophone countries. And what they mean by Francophone country, first of all, I don't agree with that terminology, but for lack of a better terminology, and to stay consistent so that you will understand what I'm talking about. Those countries all were colonized by France. And you got other ones, such as Algeria. And, if you didn't know, like, just going back in the 90s, there were major wars going on between France and Algeria. And I think over 1 million people were actually exterminated during those wars that went on back in the 90s. Now it's like all of a sudden things are shifting. They're having one coup after another on the continent of Africa. And these countries I'm speaking of the Mali, Burkina Faso, Guinea. There's old leadership that used to be puppets, basically puppets to the colonial powers, are being kicked out because the people are revolting. And I say it's a lot of this is due to this new technology, the telephone. What I'm speaking of, if you on the African continent, you can go into remote villages where there is no running water or electricity, but the people have cell phones. And with the invent of the cell phone, and with people having access to it, it's giving them access to information all around the globe. And so now all of a sudden, this information they didn't have before, they're able to get it. One thing that's totally blew my mind was when I started meeting people from the African continent and talking to them, and they had no concept of slave trade. None of them, they never knew that there was even a slave trade. Why? Because it was never taught to them. And the thing that was really disheartening to me is a lot of them had very, very poor race esteem. Some had poor self-esteem and race esteem, but then you'll find those who've got good self-esteem. And what I'm meaning is, I can do it. I believe in me. I can make it happen. I'm worthy of this. I'm worthy of that. But if I'm going to get it because you're going to bring in other people who look like me, then no, I don't want them. I want some other people who look differently. That's what I'm talking about race esteem. And we're going to get into a little more of that in the second part of this, in the perspectives. I'm going to run an excerpt that you get to check out. But anyway, what really blew my mind, again, was finding out that these people had never been taught about the slave trade. They didn't understand, even though they were colonized, they didn't really understand that. They just knew that that was life. You know, you got the French over here, and they run these things. The French, the military is basically controlled by France. The money, France was running the whole show. Now, what happens later? The countries started gaining their independence. But when they gained their independence, the big question is, was it true independence? And I say no, it was not, simply because there were pacts, and these pacts had to be signed by these Francophone leaders, and these pacts gave everything right back over to France. What I'm speaking about is all of the income, okay, the gross income created by those countries, in other words, if you want to go along with the program, you couldn't keep it. 85% of all the money that was generated from the whole country had to go back into France's banking system. Once it got into France, France had the right to do whatever. They invested in things that benefited France. Now, if one of those post-colonial countries wanted access to their own money, they had to petition for this, and they had to take it in the form of a loan. Now, keep in mind, this is their own money. But they had to take it in the form of a loan, and they had to pay interest on it. Well, I won't go any further on to that because you're going to hear something coming up a little bit later, and they're going to do, I have a person who's going to do a very good job explaining that. But anyway, that's just one of the things. The military still had to be controlled by France, and just so many things that were detrimental to those countries. Again, I'm Mali. I'm speaking of the Francophone countries. Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger. Those countries are the ones I'm talking about. And there are plenty of other ones. Well, anyway, what's going on right now in the world? What's going on right now is the people are coming into power, and they are pretty much forcing these coups, and those old leadership is dying out. They're leaving, and they can't hide anymore simply because there's too much information. Just accessibility to information has changed everything. The last of these countries that has revolted, in which there has been a coup, is Niger, which is a huge country, and it is an extremely minerally rich country, and the people are some of the poorest in the world. Listen to this. Niger has uranium, which is used to actually create nuclear energy. You have to have uranium in order to do it. And I think they're the third or fourth leading supplier in the world of this. Now, what happens is France has been getting it. They've been getting it for years. And they go back. Just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about, 1 out of every 3 light bulbs that come on in the country of France comes on by way of uranium that comes from Niger. Simultaneously, you go back to Niger, where it's coming from, where the people are, and the people, as I mentioned, are some of the poorest people on earth. There are those I was speaking about earlier who were in a conundrum trying to figure out where they're going to get their next meal. Those are the people. They have just had a coup there where the military has taken over. They kicked out the handkerchief head leader. The military is actually in control right now. Now, here's some things that's happening. You got this whole other group. There's like a coalition of nations. I think it's about 13 of them, and they refer to as ECOWAS. And those are all African nations. And they could come up with policies where if another nation, if there happened to be a coup, that they would invade and restore a democracy back. But this is becoming very, very complex and very dynamic simply because this energy that I was talking about earlier that is coming all over Earth, that people are feeling it, that is changing, it is reshaping their mentalities, it's reshaping their perceptions, it's reshaping their realities. And those people are saying, wait a minute. Okay, even though we did this, even though there are coups, are we just going to have military intervention? Or maybe it might be smarter to determine why there are these coups, why are they happening. And everybody knows. And with that, what I want to do, I want you to check this out. Right now, it is called Africa Just Shocked the World. And again, this is why I'm saying I don't understand why the news is not really highlighted. This should be front and center because it's going to directly impact you. If you're interested in doing business, if you happen to be of Africans, it doesn't matter who you are when it comes to ethnicity. It's going to affect you directly. And this, again, I've spoken before about being proactive in the decisions that you make. With this information that you're getting right here on WMEG, on Business in Motion, can prepare you to start to think differently, to come out of this box so that you're not functioning in a vacuum, but to start to think more globally and to get on board with what is going on. So I'll be right back, but check this out.
The United States just went into freakout mode over the weekend. I spoke to sources in Washington who told me this is no joke. This is a major emergency. Africa, countries rising up saying, get the heck out of our countries. Stop stealing our minerals. If you're an investor, this could be an amazing moment. I'll show you more about that in just a moment. But first, many of our Western leaders are freaking out because stuff is about to hit the fan. The dominoes are starting to fall. This weekend, we saw dramatic developments all across Africa. Russian flags being raised in the air throughout the continent. First to Niger, the country that started it all. Russian flags everywhere. And according to France 24 news service, the government of Niger has now signed a contract with the Russian Wagner Group for security. Yes, Wagner forces in Africa going to protect Niger. And they need it because the coup in Niger has entered the point of no return. The people rising up against French and United States influence. The Western powers that have controlled Niger for decades are being pushed out. And this weekend, the military leaders now say that Niger will no longer be a European colony. We're done with that. And they've demanded that all French soldiers and any United States influence get out now or face the consequences. Tens of thousands of people marched in Niger this weekend celebrating their independence and shouting no to foreign military bases, no to poverty, no to the West stealing their uranium, their phosphate, their gold, and other minerals. Get out now. Other African nations now showing their support for Niger and starting to say the very same thing. Get out of our country. This weekend, the people in Senegal rising up against Western colonial governments controlling their country. Yes, the CIA, MI6, other Western intelligence services are doing whatever they can right now to hold on to power in these countries with their puppet governments. That's why you saw crazy Victoria Nuland, who of course helped create the coup and the overthrow of the Ukrainian government, is now running into crazy mode trying to see what she can do in Africa. Colonel Douglas McGregor says the people who've had their minerals stolen for years in that country are saying, enough is enough, get out of my country.
The Africans are fed up with it. And so this is an example in Niger where a supposedly U.S.-backed government with a U.S.-trained military suddenly turned around and said, I think all of you white people need to get out of here. We've had it with you. Go away. Go. Europeans leave.
Again, we'll get to the uranium and the gold part of this story in a minute, which is arguably the most important part of this story, especially if you're an investor. But first, the story that no one's talking about is the massive natural gas pipeline that is nearly set to go online. Now, it starts in Nigeria, and it flows up through Niger on its way into Europe. Chevron and the United States have already invested $13 billion into this. And after the Nord Stream pipeline destruction, Chevron stepped up production to get this pipeline up and running. And now the people of Niger are saying, wait a second, why are we going to allow a pipeline to flow right through our own country into Europe? You are doing nothing for us, and yet you continue to steal from us. So sorry, no more pipeline. This is why Europe is terrified this morning. And it was always going to be a very cold and dreary winter because of the natural gas destruction of the Nord Stream pipeline. This winter could be even worse now if this pipeline is not allowed to go into action in Africa. Niger is saying, sorry, you're not going to use our country to transport your natural gas into Europe. Get out of here. Get out now. Europe is facing catastrophe with no Nord Stream pipeline coming from Russia. The African pipeline was their salvation. And then add into it uranium and Europe's nuclear power. The United States gets over 50% of its uranium from Russia. Despite all the sanctions of the United States has placed on Russia, they left uranium off the list. Why? Because the United States is so heavily dependent on Russia for uranium that Putin could literally flip the switch and literally destroy the American economy by turning off the lights. Think about that for a minute. They sanctioned the hell out of Russia for everything else. But, oh, we need your uranium, so we won't sanction that. Just keep sending it to us. They could turn off the lights with a flip of a switch. And now Niger, the French, the United States have essentially been stealing uranium from these African countries for decades. And again, these countries are saying enough is enough. We are sovereign countries here in Niger, in Senegal, and in Guinea, and we are going to keep our own minerals, make our own decisions. And Russia is giving them that option. They had the big African summit in St. Petersburg last week. And Vladimir Putin in Russia said, we want you to keep your own sovereignty. Oh, and by the way, we are also going to wipe away all of the debt that you owe us. Billions of dollars wiped away. Think about that for a second. We're not going to steal from you. You can have your sovereignty, and we're going to wipe away your debt. Sounds like an attractive proposition for some of these countries, right? Not a slave to the West any longer. Listen to RT's Africa Bureau Chief Musa Ibrahim explain how the people of Africa want to gain back their wealth, their minerals, stop giving it away to America and Europe.
What people want is to gain back their wealth, back their uranium, their gold, their iron, their phosphate, their oil, their gas. And this scares the West because this means the true democracy will take place in Africa when people actually own their own land and the wealth of Africa does not go untaxed, unsupervised from the mines in Niger to the banks of Paris and the financial sector in Britain.
He's right. Niger's coup isn't a singular event, but it's actually a larger narrative right now and a pushback against Western neocolonialism. Africans seeking to regain their national sovereignty. Yes, they might be independent, but with a U.S. military base and French military bases here stealing all of our minerals, how exactly are we sovereign? Imagine if China did that to the United States. Oh yeah, we're America, we're a sovereign nation. But here's Russia and China literally building military bases in our own country. Would we stand for it? No. Africa saying, hey, we are rich in uranium, but we don't get to benefit from the wealth of this mineral because you steal it from us. So guess what? We are going to enrich our own uranium, and then we'll sell it to you, and you'll pay us a fair market price for it. No more theft. Africa is in the middle of a revolution. That's the news update part of today's video. Now I want to tell you about today's sponsor, which is tied directly to the volatility of uranium right now. You could make a lot of money paying attention to what I'm about to teach you, okay? The company's name is Traction Uranium. Their ticker symbol is here on your screen. Now, please pay attention. Why? And the reason I'm releasing this video today is because the potentially undervalued price of this company. Now, as we record this video, the last time this company stock was this cheap, it went up 123%.
And there you go. You understand where I was coming from, and I'm telling you that the world is changing. It is changing very, very rapidly. I mean, extremely fast, and all I can tell you is expect more changes to occur. The earth is going to have to go through a chaotic period in order for things to get better, and we just happen to be living during a time where there's turbulence, but it is good. Just keep in mind that these things that are going on happen to be very, very good for you, provided you have your head in the right place, you listen to the right narratives, and you have the proper perspectives about these events, these things that are going on around the world. And I want to say this before we go into our only break today. France was viewed as like this ultra liberal, very good place to go, and people just, they looked up to France. There's some things about their culture. That was a narrative, and that was the perception that people actually had about France. Now all of a sudden, and one thing we haven't even spoken about or wasn't brought about in that excerpt you just heard was the same thing is going on with the Caribbean nations. But what is going on now with the new information, with the advent of the technology and the cell phone, the whole perception of France is changing. And as a result, that is a country that you are looking at on the verge of demise. And I say in one way it's kind of poetic justice, simply because how did they rise? And it goes right back to what the gentleman was saying in the video, that it was a direct result of the exploitation of the minerals of the people that happen to be on the African continent. And now with the whole group, because they kind of work together, they ain't just France. Now I don't even have to call names. You know where I'm coming from. They work together in a pact, and they had come up with the idea of saying, okay, we're going to sanction Russia. And as a result, a lot of that energy, the oil that used to come in, is no longer coming. And so now some of those countries were really relying on the uranium and using nuclear power. And they have to have this to heat. It gets cold up in Europe. They need this to, for heating, for cooling, and, just the electricity in general, their power. And now all of a sudden, Niger is saying, we're cutting this. We're changing. You are no longer the boss. With that being stated, let's get ready to go into our only break today. And I've got to play this song. It was on my mind, and I said, I got to play this because, I'm broadcasting here from Baltimore, Maryland. This was a song that I really used to like back in the day. It was a song, as a matter of fact, the whole album was executively produced by Maurice White of Earth, Wind & Fire. And this group happens to be Pockets. And the title is Come Go With Me. I'll see you as soon as we come back. Ciao, ciao.